Hello and welcome to our second YouTube live stream. Today we're going to have a special guest. Kitty's going to be here aiding me in the process because there's a lot to cover and there may be a few questions posted during the talk, as it were, and she can filter through them and help me see them at the end. So today, the subject matter is publishing. And I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my publishing background and experience, why I started in this industry, and then move on to talking about how we can use this knowledge, how we can use this decades of experience that I've got to get any projects you would like to get published, produced. So first and foremost, how did I start with this? The inspiration for moving into publishing came from certain books. I myself was working in a completely different industry. And then I discovered the works of Franz Bardon. How wonderful. This was, of course, during my teenage years. So a 16 or 17-year-old Martin started studying Franz Bardon's works in depth. And he was so moved by these that he wanted to do something to support them. And there wasn't really a UK distributor at the time. So I contacted Mercer Books and they said maybe I could do something to help and to get these books out there. So it was only a few years later when I was moving into adulthood. I must have been, it was in around about the year 2000, when I decided that it was time to professionalize this, to do something to aid the Mercer publishing and the works of Franz Bardon in a more direct way. So along with my wife at the time, I founded Faulks Books. Now, some people watching this, they may recall Faulks Books from all that time ago. And Faulks Books was really just focused on the titles that I thought were of great value and very much bringing in all the things that were produced by Mercer Publishing. When I first started, I didn't know anything about the publishing industry. So imagine this, Faulks Books went on for 2 years and all the sales were me phoning different esoteric bookshops or mainstream bookshops and presenting the titles to them. Little did I know, but there is an actual book data agency. You could register all your books with an agency, and then the information would be fed through, and people searching would find these books. And I discovered this, a couple of years in. So this kind of thing I had to learn from scratch. Now, during the Faulks Books time, there were some projects that you might be aware of now. So Memories of Franz Bardon. I can actually remember doing a sketch of what I wanted for the cover and commissioning my brother-in-law to do that Memories of Franz Bardon cover. What a wonderful thing it was to be able to bring that book into fruition. Becoming the Lotus. You might, if you search around for a real rare edition, you can find one which is under the name Anton Temple. I wasn't sure if I wanted to put my name to books and also work at Faulks Books at the same time. And so to begin with, yes, that was Anton Temple that produced that. After a while, Faulks Books expanded, and You don't make a huge amount of profit as a distributor, so it is the numbers game. And we started taking in other titles. We did this Grey House in the Woods, Graham Torboy's books on Druidry. They're really wonderful. If you haven't seen those, do check them out now. And then we started doing other titles. Faulks Books became quite a decent distributor, and it was just a two-person team at the time, but it never really made a significant income. After this kind of peak of Faulks Books as an esoteric distributor, I started experimenting with other titles. We did some work with a publisher called Sounds True that did audiobooks. And we, in addition to this, started to work with a company called Lewis Masonic, which was an imprint of Ian Allen Publishing. It was this door that opened that started to lead to the publishing career which I'll describe to you now. You see, Lewis Masonic had been very much a boutique publisher. It was really just there to produce ritual books, and though the owners were really passionate about the subject, it didn't have a website, didn't have a catalogue. It had a lot of titles that Freemasons might be interested in, but it never really done anything to get the awareness of these general titles to them in a very big way. And likewise, some of these titles, it was very important that members of the public would be able to read them. You see, there's so many books out there saying strange things about Freemasonry written by non-Masons. Wouldn't it be great to have books written by Freemasons telling the truth? So as Faulks Books started to do a lot of this, and we started to really get those books into the normal bookshops. There was actually some publicity at the time where the bookseller did an article saying, "Get ready for the Masonic boom," because we managed to get Waterstones and Otakers. Do you remember Otakers? If you're from the UK, you might remember that chain. We managed to get them to actually put a Freemasonry section in their Mind, Body, Spirit area. How brilliant was that? So based on this, I managed to negotiate a job at Lewis Masonic. And I was the salesman. There were, at the time, the Ian Allen empire was very big. You had all these different sections and departments in different hobbies. You had people who were in charge of military, people who were in charge of the train enthusiasm, that kind of thing, the train spotters, as it were, the people in charge of the buses and that kind of thing, and someone in charge of aviation. And our chairman personally handled Lewis. So there I was actually an entered apprentice at the time, and I was heading out to all the Masonic distributors and shops and tilers selling Masonic books. And I was so excited because I've got some great interests. I really thought that I'd be publishing Rosicrucian histories and esoteric texts from the early Masonry in Germany and philosophical works and that kind of thing. But at the time, the Masonic market was really interested in joke books and speech making and more social things. It was a bit frustrating because my love and my interests went against what the demand was a bit. It worked, and Lewis started to expand, and I managed to get a very famous, well-known author on board to assist with this process. Robert Lomas, if you've heard of him, the author of the Hiram Key. The Hiram Key actually got to #2 in the best-selling chart He always said to me that if Take That hadn't split up, it would have got to #1. Well, he says I'm his favourite stalker, and that's really what I had to do to get in touch with him. He had all these systems in place to stop people from contacting him, because when you've published books or when you've got high profile, you get a lot of people who want to talk to you. Well, we published Turning the Hierarchy, and Turning the Hierarchy allowed me to sell a whole range of books into the mainstream stores. And on the back of that, we did Turning the Templar Key, The Secret Science of Masonic Initiation. And I started to learn a lot more about the publishing industry and was promoted to marketing manager. Now I was sitting in those meetings with the other people in charge of their section, and I was learning a lot. I started to gain a lot more flexibility and to really see what the response would be for a book. Because I was talking to people from Amazon and from Waterstones and from Bertram's and from Gardeners each and every week. And I could hear the feedback, I could see what was going on. I also started to see how it worked with bestseller charts and with ISBNs and this kind of thing. I can remember with Robert Lomas, once we did 2 weeks of pure radio, and I can remember sitting in the James Whale show and seeing the book go up on Amazon. Sandy Toksvig, seeing the change. That was when radio was so big back then. I started to do other titles within the company. They knew if they wanted mainstream coverage, they wanted to get newspaper coverage or big radio kind of coverage, then I was the person. So if one of the other sections had something great, they'd call me in. I remember doing one on the Avro Falcon, the plane, and with Pete Waterman, wonderful man. We got on very well. We did a few books on with him. One on trains, one on how to make it in the pop industry. It was really good to be able to do those kind of things. When I look back at all the titles I've published over the years, there's many that were very successful in terms of their sales. But there's also a few which I think I'm so glad I managed to get that in print. So we did a title called Invisibles. It was published under the Invisible Story of the Rosicrucians in America. If you're interested in Rosicrucianism, you must have this. This is Tobias Churton's work. This is, if you gave Toby Churton a chance to write to any length with any amount of time on a subject, his genius just shines forth. We also published The Secret School of Wisdom, which is the genuine rituals of the Illuminati. And these were discovered in the hand of Adam Weishaupt. These are the genuine rituals and teachings of the original Illuminati. On a more personal level, I loved bringing to fruition the emulation working today. If you're a Freemason and you're interested in ritual, Graham Redmond's Emulation Working Today is the best handbook I can recommend. And more recently, the 5-Minute Ritualist, a guide to memorizing Masonic ritual. Now, of course, I've done my own projects in this time, but I won't mention them or go in depth with them here. I'm planning on another live session where I'll take you through all the books I've written. I think there's almost 20 of them now, and I can tell you what the story behind each one and what my reasoning behind it was, and indeed what the response. So then something interesting happened. Something interesting, which is a really important lesson. I was promoted again, but this time I was put in charge of the marketing, particularly the digital marketing for the whole list for all the different areas of Ian Allen. I was the digital marketing manager. And I really made an effort. So I studied and tried to get into the mindset of the other hobbies. And at the time, we had a really big magazine department and did magazines on combat aircraft, magazines on trains. They were really important part of it. But I discovered something. I lost my superpowers. And not only for the things I didn't know about, though I was trying to go along to train events and going on things, but also for the subjects I did love. If your heart's not there, then it's hard to bring your intellect there as well. So I learned a lot from that and actually took a step back and just went back to the beginning. And it's really interesting when you go back to, if you ever lose your inspiration, it's my bit of advice here, go back to where you lost it. So when I first went back to just doing Lewis titles, we were distributing for Franz Barden. The first thing I did was go back to those titles. So there I was back at Lewis Masonic, and I managed to continue to steer this ship efficiently enough that eventually I was made the general manager, and that's the position that I hold now. All this time I've been mentored by our chairman. So if there is a skill in publishing that I've gained, it's how to find a niche. The Ian Allen empire was built on a niche, and what skill sets they had was how you could identify within a market something that is needed, something which will work well and get to those enthusiasts. So now you've heard my history, my publishing experience. We've gone all the way from around about the year 2000 to 2020. But let's talk in terms of what you, the potential author, would do in order to get your book published by a publishing company. So let me explain how it works first and foremost. Most publishing companies have a publishing committee, so that there will be a chairman, and the chairman is normally the chairman of the company, but he'll also be the chairman of the publishing committee. So this will be a group that sits around a table, now modernly perhaps through around a virtual table, and they will receive proposals normally once, or in some bigger companies, twice a month. Now, it's really important that I mention here that the publishing industry has gone through a very hard time over the last few years. So a lot of these practices have changed a little bit. I know even the bigger companies now are commissioning more books and doing smaller print runs. They're finding different ways to get things through with more efficiency. It was a very strange situation a few years back. You know those cartoons where people are running along chasing each other and they run off a cliff and just keep running and then realize there's nothing below them? It was like that. Some of the very large publishing companies in the UK were printing 15,000 books and selling 500. People had to change their habits and move towards different things. And this wasn't to do with the ebooks. This is an interesting thing. We've found ebooks actually don't negatively affect the sale of books at all. There have been some really interesting studies. If you buy an ebook and you really like it, it's wonderful because you tend to go on to buy the printed one. You're more likely to buy the printed book once you bought the ebook, not less. People still want something they can hold and put on their shelves. So basically, that committee will sit around and they'll have a look at this. And because there's a number of different titles at that committee, they will get proposals which are presented to make sure that they understand the book, the USP, and the potential market. Often, the executives sitting on any one of these committees are on many of them. And they're not always sitting just judging things in the area that they are knowledgeable. I don't know why, but there's a kind of cosmic rule with mind, body, spirit style publishers where normally the person in charge isn't interested in the subject. It's quite interesting. Most of the larger publishing companies are sales-led. So the person presenting will not be the publishing manager, it'll actually be the marketing team. This is a practice that's come over from America and is a lot more common now. So someone is going to present a proposal for your book, and it's going to be circulated about 2 weeks before, so the person can read, everyone on this committee can read it, they can review a sample chapter, and they can then discuss and vote on it at that committee meeting. That is actually step one. If the book gets approved in that committee, the next one will be a costing presentation showing how much it costs to print it, how much the author is going to be paid, how much the illustrator, the person laying it out, what the cost, what is the profit going to be, how it's going to work. And that cost can be based on the predicted sales. That's gate two. And then finally, if it's approved by both of those committees, the person that you're dealing with will be in a position to make an offer to you and send you a contract and be able to publish your book. Most publishing companies are working 1.5 to 2 years in advance with their list. So they've got a plan, they've got a schedule, everything's just in order. And that means that all the staff there know what's coming through. They know that they're going to get the book in time. It's going to go through a publishing process. And we could talk about the publishing process later on in this same call if people are interested in this. And then I can tell you what you'd expect at that point. So with this knowledge, armed with this knowledge, knowing what the people are doing, what can you do to get your book published? You see, there's something in publishing they call the slush pile. The slush pile is just a pile of stuff they're not really sure about, and it's not being presented and they're sort of thinking about it, and it's not hit anyone's eye. And you need to avoid being put in that. You need to make it so the person who gets the proposal through from you really wants to present your project and feels confident doing so. So let's start with things you shouldn't do. Don't do a self-published one. If you do a self-published one, then you're saying, hey, I've sold the majority of these that are going to be sold, or produced a inferior version. Do you want to take over? So it's not very exciting for a publisher to get the end of sales, and kind of it's not working as it is. It's going to be a hard presentation. It's going to open people up to resistance. Don't go in with arrogance or aggression. You do get that. get people who are very important people who think because they're a star, you should just publish whatever they say. Or because they're a professor or an expert, or because they've discovered something. And the reason why that's trouble is the person thinks, ooh, my staff are going to have to deal with this person. They're trouble at this stage. What's it going to be like trying to edit them? What's it going to be like trying to negotiate the deal, the pictures? Whoa. Don't send your manuscript to other people. Not even the publisher gets the whole manuscript up front. Why? I've seen funny things happen. So, and I'm not just talking about the people you'd think about. People pass things on. Someone I know wrote a whole book on a subject, sent it to a friend for an opinion, who sent it to a friend who was a journalist for an opinion, and that journalist rewrote the whole thing using the research and published it. That actually happened. So just be very cautious. There are people who write like a person possessed. They have amazing skills in writing very, very quickly. And it seems those very people are the people who don't have the skill of their own ideas. It's taken me a very long time to realize how precious ideas are. For me, I have 100 of them every day, and I need a filter. I need a kitty to say, yeah, that's good, but let's just keep in the areas we're in. We don't want a massive side project. Yeah, that's good, but no. So I need other people to give me a bit of idea about things. Other people don't have 100 ideas a day. They don't have 100 ideas a year, maybe not in their lifetime. So when they hear others, they will copy them very, very quickly. And so be very cautious. And they're very good. And when the inspirational person, the idea person is going to be fine-tuning and thinking about things, they are just going to zap it out. And yes, job done, next job. Their level of detachment allows them just to write at speed. Don't tell people the secrets. Don't call people saying, wow, not good for the very reason I just gave. It's also not good for your motivation either. Don't speak it out. Write it out. This is an important thing. And the final thing that you should never do is just send a blank message to everyone. I get these all the time, and they're very badly aimed, and it really looks bad. You need to be a sniper, not someone with a shotgun. Find the decision maker. Find the person who's going to decide what gets presented. Give them everything they need. If you're going to really do this, equip them fully. And that's the next section, how to get a book published. First of all, there's actually a book by, I think it's a chapter of a book, which Terry Pratchett wrote on being an author. I've only read it because Kitty's read it to me, so maybe she can search it out for people. It's fantastic, the best advice ever. Later on, it will appear. I'm sure she'll be able to find it. Didn't give any warning on this. Second of all, after you've read that chapter, you need to start thinking in terms of a sales document. That is actually what the proposal is. The most successful authors I know who get their books published most often are those that produce the most beautiful synopsises and proposals for the person. So you need to write a synopsis, you need to write a small summary of what the book is. And then you mock up a cover. Do mock up a cover, make it beautiful, give them something to think we can do better than that, but it really means something, or put something beautiful about the subject, a picture, make it visual. Remember all those people I talked about in that committee? They're human, so they've got 5 proposals through, and they've been at that meeting, and maybe they read it, maybe they skimmed it. You need to make sure they got involved. And you need to spell it out. So put your synopsis, put the picture, put the bullet points. Absolutely brilliant. And tell them the market for it. And this is why we've got to get our mind into sales, because the most common thing authors do is they've got something in their heart, they've got something in their mind, it's something that has to be published. So they put the argument as to why this information should be in the world. And then there's a committee that's got an accountant and a salesman and different members of staff, and they're thinking, is this commercial? So they're not concerned whether there's been a book on the use of gloves in the Outer Hebrides or a hemi-unibore spherical rod end in industry. They want to know, can I sell this? The salesman there is thinking, whoa, because it's going to be trouble if he doesn't. The marketing guy is thinking, should I send my budget on this? You need to sell the idea. Now, to that end, put your bio, but your bio is actually saying, I am here to auto sell. Don't put in there, James Talbot has 3 dogs and lives in Sussex and really likes to go for walks on the beach, and put in there why. Just you being there is going to sell it. Do you give talks? Are you going to make videos like this? Do you have contacts? Are you a member of a special interest group? Do a marketing section. Say why this would sell. Make it understandable to the person how easy it's going to do. Show comparable things. Be open about competition, but explain why this is different. That document is what you need to deliver to the person. And this is really important because I've got friends who work for the bigger companies I mentioned, and I've seen the process. I've also written for the bigger companies. Humans like the easy way. Give the person presenting it the easy way. Give the salesman and the marketing person the easy way. Show them that there's a paved, beautiful road to success with your title. Make sure that that's well targeted. Once you've sent the proposal, give them a check. Did you get that? That's good. Find out the date of the meeting. Say, hey, when will you be presenting this? And then just give them a little check afterwards. Say, hey, how did that go? Then they know there's there's going to be more contact. They're not just going to forget about it. If you can, find an excuse to see that committee. Maybe they need to know about things more in depth. Maybe you've got a talk you want to give, or maybe you want to discuss something through images. Whatever thing, if there's a hint that opens it up, do it. Now, you don't have to have any worries about that, because let's face it, if you talk to that committee and they don't publish it, it's the same as if you stayed at home. You lost nothing. It's a free lottery. If they say yes, then you've got your book published with the publishing company you want. Now, this is really very powerful, because it's so much harder to say no to a project when you've seen the person. You're not saying no to the author, you're saying no to Jenny, who's outside. Then if you you can than if you're anonymous. So make sure if you can be seen, if there's a nice picture of you, that's good. But if they see you, that's even more so. Take whatever they ask you and run with it. They say, "Oh, we're looking for something a bit more like that." You say, "Ah, so you think it should be written more like that, do you?" Yeah, that's what we think. Okay, I'll resubmit the proposal. We're considering doing something like this, but we've already got a project which is like that. So, well, how could this be complementary? How could that work with that one? I mean, surely I could write something that would be marked to the very same mailing list. Use the situation to your advantage. Turn any objections into part of your proposal. So this is my advice on how to get your book published. Now I think I'm going to be able to bring my guest presenter, my guest co-presenter in to ask me any questions that have been sent. Let me make some room.
Hello everyone. Right, give me just a moment. I'm just setting up my phone next to me. I've been writing down questions. Some people have sent them directly to me and some have put them in the chat. And I've got my phone. Oh, I can see questions as they pop up as well. That's very useful. So if I may start with some of the questions that were sent to me first,
okay.
And then we'll come to some of the questions that have been asked in the chat. So in your opinion, what's the first step or the first stage when you want to write a book, once you've had that idea? So what should you do next? Do you recommend that you get on and write it, or should you be looking for a publisher and a way of getting it out there? What's that next point?
Absolutely. Okay, so here's my advice, and I'm not talking as a publisher, I'm talking as an author here.
Yes, I'll try and make a distinction.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So for me, once you get your idea, so there's a seed of a book, be cautious not to let too much of that out. You can talk it out, and then you don't have the power to do that. Keep it warm. Just like anything else needs to be produced in a container, you're going to forge this carefully. Book some time every day, or set yourself a word limit. All the professional publishers, and let me be clear here, I've guided 3 people from not writing a book to professional publisher in my life. All the professional authors I know do at least 1,000 words a day, no matter what. 500 if you've got a job, maybe. Yeah, but make sure that's your discipline. If that's what you want to do for a living. If you need to get this book out, keep that momentum going with that. I personally think for your first book, you should write it first. After that, once you're out there and you're established author, you send the proposal and you ask for an investment from the publishing company in you. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, how much you can expect to get, what you should ask for, perhaps a little bit later on, if we can add that to our list. So yes, that's the first step. Write out the outline. Write the description that you would imagine would be on Amazon of your book before you start writing it. Go through the chapters and be really tough with yourself, because if you're not tough now, your editor will be later. Editing is a kind of bittersweet, sort of painful, pleasurable thing. It's a really interesting thing. If you are writing about something you love, there will be a crazy diversion in your book. So Kitty, she's a historian and she loves armour. If we got her to write a book called Armour in Britain, we would find in there a section which was on Spanish or Italian or German armor, and she'd have bolted it in somehow, saying there was there was actually a blacksmith or armorer using this school in Wales.
In fact, you are talking about why I find writing so difficult, because I go off on 101 tangents.
Yeah. And so what happens is when the editor gets there, they go, no. And you say, no. And to you, you can't see it. You've written your whole book on burgers, and there should be this chapter on sausages to put things in context. But they say, no, it's not on sausage, it's not burgers. You will fight. Get that fight done with yourself. Make sure the book is congruent. Do not assume any level of understanding. Give a good introduction. Go through it. This is and go through with confidence. This book's going to be published. What do you want to say with to the world? Remember, it's immortal. So there's a funny thing. People tend to write a book and think, yeah, and then 2 years later think, ooh, I hadn't done that. It's really not what I kind of thought that was exciting in the moment. And now I'm going for a job interview and I've written that book on that, and or whatever. Remember, this is going to be read long after you've left this this vessel. Keep that in mind. Keep eternity in view.
So, still speaking as a writer, as an author, what do you think is the most important skill?
In writing.
In writing. So, as an author or as a writer.
Okay, this is going to show that I'm so influenced by medieval memory. So, if you're a medieval writer, what you do is more or less what I describe. Once you've got the idea, you muse on it, and you think about it, and you lie facing the ground if it's depressing, or facing up if it's not, and you muse about it. You just can't stand but write it. But then when you're just at that, you need to work out how you're going to paint images in the person's mind. How are they going to really see what you're saying and make it a journey for them? That's the most important skill. People over-edit authors now. It's actually terrible. They have a little machine that says whether, they have on their word processor, the editor can see the reading scale of it, and they can see, and they edit it for readability. For a popular book, they want it to be readable by an 8-year-old. What? So no one's got any style left anymore. They're taking away the genius of writers. Used to be a time when a publisher would be supporting a writer, would be mentoring them they get to be all the creative stuff. You're the one that looks after their commercial interest in their publicity and helps them. So the most important skill is to be able to make those images so that it's communicated with skill and pleasure.
Do you follow every idea for a book you have?
No. Indeed, here's another lesson. You might see that's a bit suspiciously similar to my one promotion too many previously, or promotion sideways rather than upwards. Whenever I've done anything with my own writing, where I thought, wow, I'll write this because it will be really interesting to others, rather than I write this because I really want to write this, I feel called to write this, I've found that it hasn't had the impact I'd expected. Genuineness is the most important thing. So contemplate, why am I wanting to write this? What am I going to say? And let go of those things which are they're not why you are here. They're not from you. That's my opinion on this.
So go for something that's genuinely in the heart rather than the head.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for to make your passions, put your passions into hieroglyphs.
I have a follow-up question, which is a kitty question. So you said that you don't follow every idea. What percentage of ideas would you say have actually manifested as a published book?
Of my own ones?
Of your own. So of your own ideas that you want to write or have wanted to write over your life, what percentage do we have as books?
Okay, about 0.2%. So the nature of being me is inspiration. So, wow, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do this. Someone sent me a text today on optics, and it involved different devices to be able to make thin strips of light to be able to divide the rays and everything. And I sat there and thought, don't do this. Don't do this. So I see someone do something amazing, I think, I'd like to do that. And the same with books. If let the important ones through.
So our next question is, and you kind of have already answered this, are ebooks the death of normal books, of hardbacks and paperbacks and such?
Yeah, so no, they're not. Ebooks are a wonderful thing. It allows you, if you're living in a camper van, to have a giant library. It allows you to go on holiday and read things. It allows you to see if you like the book first. It brings in extra income. What is adversely affecting the industry is a change in habits. People enjoy watching things, not reading them now, to a higher degree. And that's really why the industry is becoming niche. One of my friends, he's been a great inspiration to me. You may have heard of Jonathan Black, and he saw this coming many years ago, and I didn't believe him. He said to me it's going to move more into niche areas and so on. Mark Booth, he wrote the Secret History of the World.
That's a great
wonderful man as well. And yes, he saw this, he foretold it all, and that's where we are now. Niche publishers. If you write a book, find a publisher. It's the best match for you. You know that they've got a email list that sort of is all the people interested. That's going to make a big difference.
And do keep the questions coming in. You may see me every now and again. I'm just writing them down so I don't forget any. So our last question that was sent directly to me is this: what is the biggest challenge you have come across as an author?
For me, it's time. So this is not it's not a quick thing to do, and it involves attention to detail. So it's a different skill set, and my life's very full. 2 sections of practice every day, physical exercise every day. I'm general manager of a publishing company. So often,
and your meditation school as well, of course.
And of course the Sishan school. So to write a book in addition to that, and run a YouTube channel,
yes,
all these things, and it's hard, and this is a labor of love. It's something you want to really perfect and spend a lot of time on. So that's the biggest challenge for me is time.
So now we come to some of the questions that the viewers have put forward. First of all, we have, what is the benefit of using a publisher rather than self-publishing? Very wonderful. Good question there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So coverage. So if you've got a publisher, not only should you have a better product, they've got an illustrator for the cover, they've got someone to do the layout, they've got someone to proofread it and edit it. It's so hard to proofread your own text. And they've got someone who's eagle-eyed. And there's all sorts of tricks to try to get you to proofread your own text. You can print it out on yellow paper so your mind says, oh, it's new and things, but you've got that. So
get your partner to read it.
Yeah, get your partner to read it or edit it. So you've got that in place. Then you've also got a support team in terms of marketing, and you've got a salesperson, and you've got the sales network, and you've got existing people, who have already purchased from that. It makes a big difference. And so, I mean, there are some publishers, if you were to publish with Hay House, for example, they have wonderful support for an author, helping them have book talks and get publicity and how to manage themselves. There are some of these really good publishers out there. If you publish with Falcon Books, you've got an ally, someone to advise you how to angle it and do online marketing. So you've got someone else there. You've got a whole team, and unless you've got knowledge in those areas, it can be pretty hard to do on your own. Small tweaks make a big difference. If you self-publish, if you put something through a self-publishing company and there's a little error or it's not quite listed right in the book data, no one's sitting there thinking, how do we change this? So I would recommend for most projects, you are far better to go through a publisher who's willing to sort of invest in it for you.
Well, I'm going to skip ahead so we stay on the same rough area. How do you choose the best publisher for your work?
Yes, so you need, again, be like a sniper. Find that publisher who you buy books from. Find that publisher who has that marketplace. They should be on your radar. Get to know the people there. It may be that your initial approach, if you're an established, you've got your first book out and you're wanting to do more things, it might be you need to, and you want to be a professional publisher, you might need to put the person's, fill the person's shop. So you might give them a proposal and it'll get rejected. You just put that to the side. Then you do something that you really want to do but is in their market. And once you get one through, you just rework that afterwards, after there's one success, and represent. Nowadays, few people have agents. Agents used to do this very skillfully, but most people just do things directly. So that's the way to do it, to find the publishers that you're reading books by and that have the market. A lot of them have got the direct means, they've got the publicity. If you're writing a cookbook and you go to a publisher that's doing those cookbooks, they know all the magazines to send review copies to. They know the journos, they know the journalists who are doing the reviews. Yes, they've got that in. So that's a really important thing.
So may I suggest we circle round to an idea you came to earlier, which is what you should be asking for from a publisher. So what should you be expecting from your publisher?
Yes, absolutely. So this, some of this doesn't apply for certain people, and namely, there's I'll tell you when. So first and foremost, a publisher will normally pay between 7-10% royalties. So that's normally what you're going to get. It used to be 7% for paperbacks and 10% for hardbacks. That's normally what a publisher will pay you. From some publishers, do something sneaky. You've got to watch out for this. In their contract, if they say 10% of profits, ooh, that's different. You're looking for 10% of the cover price. Unless it's a very prestigious publisher, maybe that's not going to be very worth it. You may get an advance. So that would be a percentage of what they will pay you for the whole print run, paid up front. Normally that would be in 3 steps. That would be when you sign, you get a percentage, you get a payment. When you submit, you get a payment. And when it's published, you get a payment. Now, with small hobby publishers, it's less common, and when it does exist, it's not as much. But this is part of mainstream publishing, and often the advance is being used for you to do the research or to pay for the images or something like that to go in. So here's the bit of advice that applies to all potential authors, apart from those who are dealing with me at Lewis Masonic. What you should be doing is continually trying to get more money. So you start off, and it's going to be built on success. So you've got to make it work. You can't sell a book and it sits there and sells 5 copies and it's terrible. But once you've established a couple of books that are doing very well, you should just start to ask for a little bit more upfront. And it's a principle that I've always used with other publishers. And make sure it's a publisher that can afford it. Just ask for just a little advance first. I just want just a little token.
So once you've proven yourself.
Once you've proven yourself.
Would you say that this isn't necessarily advice for your first
No,
book?
the first book, just get that through. That's the first thing. Just wow. It's even worth taking, as long as it's a proper publishing company, it's going to do the publicity, get your name out there, and that's good. And perhaps give you the right associations. If you're wanting to specialize in mind, body, spirit, and you get a book with Llewellyn, that's wonderful. That's got you in position. If you're writing on history, get it with a history book. The first book that's it. After that, and you've proven yourself, everyone's doing well, it's selling well. That's when you maybe not the second, but maybe the third. You just start to ask a little bit more. So I'm being very loyal. Most book contracts will have a clause that says you need to give them the first refusal on the next book. Anyway. And of course, you could say, yeah, the next book is this, and I need a huge advance for it. No, you don't want to do it. I'm taking it somewhere else. You could do something to sort of not in keeping with the spirit of that. But if you've got someone that's working, you be loyal and just ask for something in return.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go back to asking them in order now. So Max Latham apparently is currently translating a book about magico-religious rituals in indigenous tribes, which sounds fascinating. He says that there's a translation book, poor translation out at the moment, so he's very carefully doing this. And he's wondering if this is something Lewis would be interested in, but maybe if not, where would you suggest it does go?
Well, Max, I'd need to look at that a bit more and sort of muse on exactly who to place it, because obviously it's not original text, it's your translation. And there's probably a niche somewhere. So there's probably someone who's waiting for this text. It's an interesting thing. I mean, let's face it, you're talking to the guy who, one of the most successful projects I've done is a translation of a 17th century memory manual. So there's a group of people somewhere out there, Max, interested in that title. I'm not sure whether it would be a Lewis title.
Just to add, he says it's a set text for several universities.
Well, there we are. And so
there is an exact market.
So we need to, most universities have their own publishers.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, maybe you need to go to them and say, hey, what a great plan you're about to come up with. I've published this. It could be, sometimes you could be quite sneaky, Max. You could look and see, who's the man in charge of that department there? Does he have anything to do with the publishing? He does. Okay. Right, let's really polish this translation. Okay. Let's go to him for advice. Say, hey, I'm thinking of trying to get this published. I've made this translation. I'd like your opinion on it. And of course, he will have an opinion. The wonderful thing about academics like yourself, Max, is they have a lot of time for other fellow enthusiasts. You go to the Center of Platonic Studies, in a university, and say, I want to know whether they're practicing meditation, and you'll be there for 4 hours, when they should be, working on students' texts or something. So yeah, that could be really targeted. So yes, send me the synopsis. That's that synopsis again. Tell me a bit about the market. You never know. I might be able to advise there. And thanks for thinking of me first.
Can I just expand on that? Because from what you've said there, something that's really important is research, not just in writing the book, but also when you're going out, whether it's researching the best publisher, or even you're talking about trying to find someone who's connected that you can find a way in through that. So that sounds really useful.
Yes, building your allies. It makes it so different thing. There are some authors who have got to the point of their establishment where they go and see their publisher, they go to the commissioning editor, and actually that's something, if we could do a little bit on how to find the right person in the near future, we'll put that in. You go to them, some people who go to the right person of the publishing company and say, what do you want me to do next? So the relationship's changed. They're saying, I'm here, what do you want?
So our next question is, would you say the visual or literary market is more competitive?
As in photos, and are we talking about the visual in that? Or I need a bit of clarification. Are we saying visual as in books, which are picture books? Or are you saying visual as in paintings or movies, that kind of thing? So perhaps you kindly post that if you could clarify what you were asking with those that too.
For a book, should one aim for about 100,000 words, or what would be your advice?
Okay, I think I saw this from William. Yes, don't limit yourself either way. There are some books which are life-changing, aren't they? And they're very short. And there's some tomes which I look at and I think, how did someone write that? That's a life work. That's a different being. That was written by a demigod of letters there. Just make sure you get the right message there. And there have actually been some strange historical projects where, especially in the 17th century, this will make the historians' ears prick up, where people were paid by the word. And you get these giant tomes on which really could be 3 pages. So we don't want to get into that. No filler. And in fact, has anyone here read a book and you think, this is just waffle? They're just saying the same thing in different ways. And it's because someone's going, yep, fill this book. Fill this. Oh, no. So just get it out the way it should be.
So our next question is quite long, but it is very interesting. So David Newman Scott is the author of The New Rules of Marketing and PR and similar books, which promotes the idea in the world of information marketing that you should publish your best ideas in a blog, attract your market, and then they'll buy your ebooks or books and other products. And they'll want more, you leave them wanting more. Yeah. But on the other hand, you said earlier about holding your secrets close to your heart, not giving them away too easily, because obviously that's what you're then wanting to sell. So how do we balance that? What should be kept secret? What should be saved for the books? And how do you decide? Very good, interesting question.
Right. Now, what's that, Sam
Robbins?
Ah, yes. Yeah. Sam, please share the link to your blog here. Everyone who ever sees this from now on will want to see your blog. I know that much so. It's somewhere where I end up very often. So I think you're doing the right thing here, Sam, in the sense you're not giving away everything. Your blog, your whatever, whether it's YouTube or whether it's your blog, everything is showing the people what is there. And actually, probably some of the things that you want to share are too complicated. So I couldn't openly speak about some things on YouTube. I couldn't go into detail on things. Some things are far too big a scope. And the same with your blog. So I think you're doing what's right. You're saying, this is amazing. Have a look at this. But when the time is right, you say, right, do you want to know do you want to know the rest? So it's a tease. It's the front of your shop is your website. Don't give the actual answers there. They will be taken. And also, no one wants to see the film if they've seen the ending first. You know, it's don't spoil it for people. Don't spoil the journey. So yes, that's an important thing. So I love that strategy, and you have shown a great example of how that's working. So yes, everyone, tease people, give them valuable things. Don't, when I say tease, don't say hey, and give as much as you is comfortable on that blog, but make them clear that there's a gate they need to go through if they really want to know.
And if I may add some advice that I've heard you give other authors, a lot of the time when you say about holding the secrets or not quite giving everything away, you also talk about that stage before the book is written, not letting the energy go before you've put it into getting it down on paper.
There's a friend I had, a very enthusiastic man who was always writing a book. And he was the most amazing researcher. And he'd find something that was genuinely groundbreaking. And he'd phone me, and he'd phone other authors, he'd phone his friends, he'd phone this. And he knew about 4 authors, and maybe he's a little bit starstruck with them. And they'd end up publishing all his stuff. And he never finished the book. Bless him. Yeah.
Okay, so our next question is, when you are assessing the likely success of a book that you're considering publishing, do you prefer fully referenced academic works or something that's more aimed at the average person?
Okay, so this is a wonderful question.
Colin,
wonderful. Thank you, Colin. So you bought, I mentioned earlier on during my publishing biography that when I first started, the market was after light-hearted joke books and speech-making books, that kind of thing. Maybe some illustrated guides, but that's it. That's all gone now. I don't know what's changed, whether it's the university scheme, but now in the Masonic market, people want the truth, and they want it provable to an academic level. And those books that used to be selling 2,000-3,000 a year, no one wants a book of Masonic jokes anymore. Well, few people. Now they want something, and if you say something, I think probably years of people being very romantic and full of imagination with history of these subjects has got to the point where people think, yeah, that's great. We've heard about all that. Yes, great. Da Vinci Code, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Yeah. Now, if you speak, I want to see your reference. I want to see the truth. Yeah. So that's changed.
A very interesting shift. One that I'm very happy about.
So I will look for that more, but not from my own point of view, though I do like that as well. But from the point of view, obviously, my job isn't to publish things that I like and love. It's to publish things that others will like and love in the niche that I'm looking after.
So we're going back to publishing a little bit. What is your view on using an agent versus contacting a publisher directly?
What is the nature of you? So if you are a gentle person who finds it very stressful to talk to people and finds it hard to be refused, then you need an agent. And I know one wonderful agent. I haven't talked to her in a long time. I've put many authors with her. I've seen others. It's quite hard to get an agent to take you on, but we have different characters. So for me, there's no phone call that's really going to be very concerning for me. If I phone someone, they reject me, I think, oh, okay, and phone someone else or send that to someone else. Other people, because of the beauty of their creativity, are very hurt by these things. They've got all the skills, but you wouldn't want Mozart to be pitching his own work. He's too close to it and to Mozart. That wouldn't go well. So yes, so it's to do with your character. Now it can be that you don't need an agent if you find the right publisher. So I've got some authors who are a bit like that. They're so genuinely engaged, that the commercial part of it's not what they want to be thinking about, but they've got me. So, okay, well, no, that's not going to work. Well, this is going to work. They've got me, and they're just happy in that area. But if you're going to go to different publishers and agents, very good. They all know them. I've commissioned things from agents, from 2 or 3 over the years. A lot of publishers like me think, ooh, when there's an agent, ooh, this is going to be this may be a bit different. They tend to have some very strong ideas and ways of doing things, and may not fully understand how much of a niche this market is. They're taking a percentage, so that might be factored into what they're going to ask for. So you can see how that could work both ways.
How do you find an agent first? Is it the same as trying to find a publisher, or is it different?
It's different. So London Book Fair is really good. And have a look at agencies online, have a look and see what's happening. If you are an up-and-coming author, you'll probably be best looking for an up-and-coming agent.
Okay, we've actually gone over time, so we're going to ask the questions we have, but that will be it.
All good.
So, how can a publisher accommodate an author who has access to or is willing to exploit a very specific niche market?
If you're in the same niche as the author, as the publisher, that should be wonderful. So if you came to a yoga publisher and said, I am a member of this ashram, right, and it's got a mailing list of 70,000 people, and they say they will support me and do an email. Here's my book, and you give them a nice, beautiful looking proposal with some nice pictures and a synopsis and everything and the explanation of it. And then to a yoga publisher, they're going to think, wow, Christmas has come early. Because they know that you are not only going to do this book, which they can sell other places, but you are a lead into the contact to that marketplace. That email advertises your book, but it advertises their name and probably their website. So this should be a very good thing. So you can say, so you're more or less saying, hi, I'd like to open the door for you.
But then how is that good for the author? So then reversed, how is that good if the author already has access to that market? Do they need a publisher? Should they self-publish? Or is there...
Well, it should, yes.
An advantage to them for doing so.
Theoretically, I suppose this is to do with who's got the loudest microphone. So that if your mailing list is bigger than, so your ashram's mailing list is bigger than the publisher's mailing list, that's the wrong publisher. It should be you're adding to what they're doing. They should be able to make a bigger impression than you.
And I suppose in that example you've said, also it means for that particular, say, if they're a yoga teacher, then they're also getting access to a bigger audience who may have not heard of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, that yoga publisher, I think it's brilliant, 70,000 mailing list, but their own is going to be 500,000. And they've got reps going into Waterstone saying, hello, do you want a book on yoga? They've got all the little yoga shops and the different yoga centers they're selling into. They should be able to hit harder than you as an author. That's very good. The other thing they can do that you probably can't is sell the foreign rights. So your contract's in, so you probably have a look online. You see a lot of Lewis titles are in different languages. The big publisher will do at least 8 or 9 different languages. Each time there's an income from that. Each time it opens opportunities. So it produces a lot more than you're doing. And it also means you've got your time just to write. So that's an advantage. When to publish on your own? when it's not commercial. When it's not commercial at all. I've done it. I've done it when there's something that is so close to what I'm doing that maybe they're not going to quite be able to do that. So yeah, sometimes when it's not a commercial thing, and thus commercial publishers they're going to want to change it to something. I was told very early on in my writing career, there you go, it's a bit of advice. Who are you going to upset with your book? What do you mean? Well, if you write it for the real experts in the area, if Kitty writes her book on armour, and it's talking about what's the name of the bits on the shoulders?
Depends if it's the German or Italian or... Okay, pauldron.
The pauldron, right? She's writing a guide to pauldrons and their designs. The only people who want to read that are going to be the other armour enthusiasts.
Yeah, there's no point me publishing my dissertation on 14th century armour in England, for example. It's so specific.
That would be for other armourers and historians, yeah. And indeed, it's impossible to sell it to someone. If I said, right, stay near this bus stop, right, and here's a guide to 14th century armour, sell it to these people, then we go, how much do you want for it? Even you have to lower the price. And the old lady saying, I don't want a guide to. So you upset the non-specialists. If you switch, if Kitty's going to write a book on armour for everyone, the enthusiasts look at it and think, well, she just says there's spauldrons. It's not always spauldrons. It's spauldrons in this country. There's different names for that in that country. And she didn't mention that this is like that. And she lifted out this because she's had to do a simple message for everyone. Now, you can kind of do them so that it minimizes the upset, and you can be clear, this is a simple guide, I'm not covering everything. But yes, make sure you know which people are going to be not interested in your book.
And if I can add something as well that I've just thought of, a good publisher that's within the niche market will add to your brand, as it were, will make it.
Oh yes, so that's a big thing. So
there's a word I'm looking for which I can't think of.
Yeah, so it gives a certain sense of gravitas and status.
Status, that was the word. Thank
you. It's a really big thing. So from my point of view, and I perhaps would have that with the company I work for, if I'm someone writing on a subject on Freemasonry or a related title, the oldest Masonic publishing company in existence, with the most successful, I want at least one book with them. If I'm a historian, there must be other publishers. Kinder probably even knows other armour publishers that are in my, I don't know, but there must be some like that for people.
Okay, I'm going to break what I said, my rule, because Clinton has asked a really interesting question. So we'll end with this. How do translation collaborations work? So, for example, he'd like to see some Spanish-speaking readers have access to Hermetic texts that are only found in the English language, for example, some of your own. So how would that work?
Okay, Clinton, normally it works like this. The publisher will have translators that they use. So what happens is they'll approach the publisher and say, hi, I'd like to publish this book. So I think there's too many uses of the term publisher. The foreign publisher will have their own translators, normally freelancers. They will look around for things they want to translate. They will go and pay the publisher in the native language for the rights of it, then have it translated and then publish it. If you yourself, Clinton, want to do this, you're probably best off looking to contact a publisher and say, I'd like to translate works for you. Or you might, I've seen this work really well, you might break the system by going to the native publisher, saying, I want to translate this and publish it. Now, that does mean you're going to be the one-man publishing team. You're effectively starting your own publishing company. but that is a good way into translation work. I've seen work for people. Often the publishing companies that you want to work with already have translators. So with my works, it depends on which publisher that you're talking about. So if it was Falcon Books, you could talk to them and say, I want to translate these and so on. With Lewis, if they're that kind of one of my Lewis titles, I'd have to wear a few hats to deal with that, but we could work something out. In fact, I know a Spanish publisher, but I suspect they have already got a translator. So I hope that's answered it and not sown any confusion. Do let me know if you want me to clarify anything.
Right, I think we have reached the end of our question and answer session on publishing. Thank you everyone who joined us, and thank you, Martin, so much for your insights as well.
It's been an honour talking about these things. It's a subject that, as you can imagine, I have very close to my heart. Until next time, everyone, let's let every word, thought, and action count.